Jason, here in the last week, a couple commits from the 2022 class, an outside linebacker, Kip Lewis, and also Jayden Rowe into the fold.
Yeah, it actually got Oklahoma back up into the top 5 overall in the 2020 rankings, according to 247 Composite. Number 1 in the Big 12 at this point. Of course, it's still obviously very, very early. So, you got a 4-star commitment from Carthage, Texas, Kip Lewis, 6'1", 200 linebacker, top 25, 26 overall at the position in the country from a linebacker perspective. And then Jayden Rowe, who is a local product of Tulsa Union here in Oklahoma. He's a 3-star, but the size, again, we've talked a lot about like what Grinch likes specifically from a secondary perspective. 6'3", 210. So he's got that size from a cornerback, safety, athlete position perspective. Right now is where he's ranked, but he'll probably certainly be a cornerback at Oklahoma. He's a little raw. He is a 3-star, so he's not extremely highly rated. But I think more importantly, that inroads within the state of Oklahoma from a recruiting perspective has been good as of late. And Oklahoma wants to tap into that a little bit more. Certainly with Gentry Williams still as an uncommitted prep star here in 2022, who is probably the top ranked, or at least the top couple 2 or 3 kids in the state of Oklahoma. So yeah, getting that up to number 5 is good. Oklahoma's they've got a lot of commitments on the offensive side of the ball. They're focusing a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball here as we get into the summer.
Jason, if you're a California school trying to compete for a Pac-12 championship, Texas school, Florida school trying to compete for a conference championship, you can pretty much stay at home, get the job done. Sure, you're going to go elsewhere to the best players and try to get them as well. I liken Oklahoma situation a bit to Ohio State situation. Ohio high school football has always been extremely strong, but it's not as strong as it was in the 80s and 90s. People are moving south, they're moving west. It's still a top 7 to 8 to 9 state in the country in high school football, but that drop from the top 2 or 3, it's pretty much of a cliff, but it's still strong high school football. But you cannot compete for national championships at Ohio State just staying at home. Similarly, when I look at the 11th rated player in the country at cornerback, the 62nd rated cornerback in the country in Kip Lewis, according to the 247 Sports, and I see that he's the 11th rated player in the state. Where would you assess Oklahoma high school football? How strong is it? How much does Oklahoma, and again, I go back to some of my conversations with Ohio State, where they have to balance keeping those in-state connections and staying strong in state to show that there's that loyalty and that tie, but at the same time saying we're a national program, we've got to go out there and get the best players.
Yeah, Mark, it's a really interesting conversation. I think over the last few years, specifically since Lincoln Riley has taken over, they've had a little bit of a different approach, really from a national perspective to, they've always recruited Texas very well. They've always recruited, Arkansas, Louisiana, those areas, but they're being a little bit more, I think, choosy in terms of the guys that they're going to get nationally. Really, you mentioned California and Florida as really, some of the top states in terms of high school talent, but I think Oklahoma is up there. They've been a little bit up and down. They've typically, over the last 5 or 6 years, they've had 1 to 2 kids that have been really good high FBS Power 5 team talent. This year, the 2022 class is probably the best class in terms of Oklahoma prep athletes that they've had in quite some time. There's probably about 4 or 5 kids that are really good on the national stage. So I think it's very important. I think the typical local fan likes to see you get a lot of the local products in. There's some there's a lot of debate on if you're a local Oklahoma product, maybe it means a little bit more to you. I don't put a lot of stock into that, but I think what Oklahoma really needs to do a little bit better of a job of is really getting those. You can still be choosy and then get those great players within the state. They've not really done a good job of that over the last few years. There's been a lot of good talent that's went outside the state. Ohio State with a Proctor kid a few years ago, and then just a few of those kids that have really kind of slipped through their hands. So I think to answer your question, Mark, I mean, it's certainly not one of the top 10 states in the country in terms of high school talent, but I think that Oklahoma has to be really good at getting those top kids to stay in state.
And I think you hit on something there. Again, focusing on making a correlation between Ohio State's situation and Oklahoma's, where you want to get the best players in the state, because those best players in the state, they are good enough to play for you, whether that's the top 4 or 6 of the top 9, something in that range. 7 of the top 11, that's about where it starts to drop off, it seems, in a state of that caliber. But then again, you've got to fill out 85 scholarships and 105 roster spots or something in that vicinity. 105 seems to be the number. So then why not stay in state for those guys that are going to be program players? They're going to be 2 to 3 stars that are going to serve on special teams. And why not make that, again, continue that relationship with the high school coaches association and the in-state element to fill out the roster with a lot of in-state guys. I don't know what the population is in Oklahoma. What roughly does Oklahoma stand nationally in terms of population?
Oh gosh, I mean, I know the greater Tulsa area is around, I believe, around 1.5 million, a couple million. So I mean, it's not. I don't know off the top of my head. It's one of the smaller states, I think, in the country, probably, in the 30 to 40th range overall, I would say, from a population perspective. Yeah, and I think it's a good point that you make, specifically around some of the lower tier talent in the state of Oklahoma. The one thing that Oklahoma has done a good job, and they've taken a couple, 2 or 3, 4 kids over the last couple of years, specifically this year, as preferred walk-ons. Really specifically when you're kind of talking about the 105-man roster, the 85 scholarship roster that you're looking at for Oklahoma. So they've got a couple of quarterbacks that they brought on as preferred walk-ons, a couple players on the defensive side of the ball, even one kid as of late on I believe, a linebacker to be a preferred walk-on. So yeah, there's been a couple of kids just from a roster supplementation perspective that Oklahoma's been able to do.
Got 20 on the line here live, talking Oklahoma football, and I know that this has been a bit of a late notification, so thank you so much for joining us. So welcome to our Oklahoma station right here at the Voice of College Football, and we've got 22 team channels, and the Sooners are one of them. So if you love Oklahoma football, or if you're just a college football fan, and I run into this all the time, there are a ton of college football fans out there that just want to keep track of all the big programs and all the big brands. And so lock it in right here. Jason has been instrumental in ensuring that we're able to provide a consistent content here. So you've probably checked that out. Now understand that we aim to be here live just about every week is our goal. We've got vacations and other obligations and responsibilities, but for the most part, we expect to be here every Friday for just about a half hour to an hour. We'll do close to 90 minutes today talking college football in Oklahoma and the Big 12 in particular with Jason.